I didn't sleep that night. The text sat on my phone screen like a wound I couldn't close. I kept replaying it in my head, my fingers trembling every time I checked for a new message. None came. By dawn, my eyes burned from staring into the dark. Timothy padded into my room, hair messy, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, are you okay?" I forced a smile, smoothing his hair back. "I'm fine, baby. Just didn't sleep." But I wasn't fine. I was falling apart. And Peter still hadn't called. Around 9, the sound of a truck pulling up outside made me freeze. My heart thundered. I peeked through the curtain, breath catching. It was Peter's truck. Relief hit so hard I almost collapsed. I ran to the door, flinging it open before he could knock. He looked different. Not hurt, but pale. His shirt was wrinkled, his knuckles scraped raw like he'd been gripping something too tight. His eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. "Peter," I gasped. "Where were you?" I know." His voice was horse-tired. "I should have called." I dragged him inside, shutting the door behind us. "I got a text. They knew you were looking for him. They said if you don't stop..." My voice cracked. "They said I'll be next." Finally, his eyes met mine. What I saw there made me shiver. Anger. Fear. And something else, something like guilt. "I found him," Peter said quietly. I swallowed. "Victor." He nodded, sinking into the chair at my kitchen table. "Not face to face. But I found his office. More like a front, a real estate place with his name barely on the door. I went inside, asked for him. The woman at the desk smiled like she'd heard the question 1,000 times. Said he wasn't in. But the way she looked at me, Lois..." He trailed off, rubbing his temple. "She knew who I was. She knew why I was there. And when I walked back to the truck, someone had left a cigarette burning on my windshield." My stomach twisted. The smoke from the warehouse, curling like a signature. "It's a message," I whispered. "Yeah." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "He knows me now. Knows I'm with you. And he's not hiding. He wants us to know he's close." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the morning sun spilling through the blinds. "Peter, what if he comes here? What if Timothy?" "He won't touch Timothy." Peter's voice sharpened. "Not if I'm here." But the promise sounded too easy, too fragile against the weight of Victor's shadow. Later that day, I forced myself to the workshop, though my hands shook every time I threaded a needle. Anna came by, dropping off coffee, her usual chatter bright but her eyes sharp. "You're jumpy," she said, setting the cup on the counter. "I'm fine," I lied. "No, you're not." She lowered her voice. "I've seen you rattled before, but this is different. Lois, tell me what's going on." I wanted to. God, I wanted to unburden all of it. The texts, the smoke, Victor's name carved into my nightmares. But the words stuck. Because if I told her, she'd be in it too. And I couldn't bear that. That evening, Peter came back with folders tucked under his arm. He spread them across my kitchen table, his expression grim. "More records," he explained. "Victor's real estate deals. He's buying up property all over town. Cheap warehouses, empty lots. Including the one we found." I leaned closer, scanning the papers. "But why? What does he want with abandoned buildings?" "That's the part one can't figure out." He sighed. "But I do know this, he doesn't want you anywhere near them. Which makes me think you were right in the middle of something Andrew started." The thought made my head spin. "So this is about Andrew after all?" Peter hesitated. "Maybe. Or maybe it's about whatever Victor and Andrew built together, and now Victor's cleaning up the pieces." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Both of us froze. Another text. "You're not listening. Next time I won't warn you." Peter's jaw tightened. He grabbed the phone from my hand, reading it twice before slamming it down on the table. "That's it. No more waiting for him to come to us. We take this to the police." My pulse spiked. "Peter, what if they don't believe us? What if..." "They will," he cut in. His eyes burned with resolve. "Because if they don't, we're already in too deep. And I'm not letting him touch you." For the first time since leaving Andrew, I felt something new settle in my chest. Not fear. Not hope. Something sharper. War. Victor had given his warning, and I wasn't sure I could obey. Walking into the police station felt like walking into a different world. The hum of voices, the clatter of keyboards, the sharp scent of burnt coffee. It should have been comforting, a place of safety. But my stomach churned with unease. Peter held the door for me, his jaw clenched tight. He hadn't spoken much on the drive, and I could tell it wasn't just anger boiling inside him. It was fear, the kind he refused to show. At the front desk, a uniformed officer barely looked up. "Help you?" Peter stepped forward. "We need to file a report." "It's urgent." The officer slid a clipboard toward us. "Fill this out. Someone will call you back." Something in me snapped. "No. We're not here about a lost wallet. We're being threatened. My son and I are in danger." That made him glance up, eyes narrowing. He studied me, then Peter, then slowly pushed the clipboard aside. "Sit tight. I'll get a detective." We waited on hard plastic chairs, the clock ticking too loudly. My hands wouldn't stay still. I kept twisting them in my lap, remembering the texts, the smoke, the cigarette on Peter's windshield. Finally, a tall man in a plain suit appeared. He had thinning hair, sharp eyes, and a badge clipped to his belt. "Detective Rourke," he introduced himself, shaking Peter's hand before motioning us into a small interview room. Inside, the walls were beige and bare, the air stale. Rourke flipped open a notebook. "Start from the beginning." So we did. Or rather, Peter did. He laid it out clean and logical. The warehouse fire, the smoke, the texts, the name Victor Hale. I chimed in where I could, my voice wavering when I described the messages that kept me awake at night. Rourke listened, pen scratching across paper. His expression never shifted, not even when Peter described the cigarette left burning on his truck. When we finished, silence hung heavy. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "You're saying Victor Hale is threatening you," he said slowly, "through anonymous texts and smoke signals." The way he said it made me flush with shame, like I'd just confessed to believing in ghosts. Peter stiffened. "You think we're making this up?" "I didn't say that," Rourke replied evenly. "But Hale's a slippery guy. He's been on our radar before. Fraud, money laundering. Nothing sticks. People complain, then they disappear. Or they recant. Either way, we never have enough to nail him." I swallowed hard. "Disappear? You mean?" Rourke's gaze sharpened. "I mean people move, change their stories, stop answering calls. Officially, nothing criminal. But unofficially." He shook his head. "The man's got reach." That chill again, crawling up my spine. "So what do we do?" Peter demanded. Rourke tapped his pen against the table. "You let us handle it. I'll file the report, flag it. If Hale contacts you again, forward the messages. Don't confront him. Don't provoke him." It sounded reasonable. Logical. But when I met Peter's eyes, I saw the same thing I felt. Doubt. Because if Victor Hale was untouchable, what good was a piece of paper? As we left the station, Peter muttered, "That was a waste of time." "Maybe not," I said quietly. "At least it's on record. On record won't stop him if he decides to show up at your door." His words made my chest tighten. That night, I tucked Timothy into bed and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. No new messages. The silence felt worse than the threats. When Peter stopped by later, he carried a bag of groceries and forced a smile. "Thought you could use these." I searched his face. "Do you think Rourke will really help?" Peter hesitated. I think he meant what he said. "But if Hale's as connected as it looks," he trailed off, then lowered his voice. "We need to be ready for the police not to protect us." The fear in me twisted into something sharper. Determination. "Then we'll protect ourselves," I said. Peter studied me, like he hadn't expected the steel in my voice. Then he nodded once, slow and firm. But later, as I cleaned up the dishes, a thought gnawed at me. Detective Rourke had taken notes, asked questions, but there was something in his eyes when Victor's name came up. A flicker, almost like recognition. And for the first time, I wondered, was he warning us about Victor, or warning Victor about us? The strangest thing about terror is how quiet it can be. Days passed after our visit to the police, and nothing happened. No texts. No smoke. No strange cars idling outside the workshop. Just silence. And that silence was worse than the threats. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest clenched. Every time Timothy laughed in the other room, I checked the windows twice, just to be sure no one was watching. Peter tried to calm me. Maybe the reports scared him off, he said one evening, sitting at my kitchen table while I hemmed a dress. Maybe Hale knows the cops are watching now. But even he didn't sound convinced. Do you believe that? I asked quietly, pinching fabric between trembling fingers. Peter paused, then admitted, no. Men like him don't just stop. I wanted to argue, but the words caught in my throat. Because I already knew he was right. The silence finally broke 3 nights later. Timothy had just gone to bed when the knock came. Sharp, deliberate. Not frantic like Anna or casual like Peter. It was the kind of knock that said, I already own the air on the other side of this door. My blood turned to ice. I froze in the hallway, not daring to breathe. The knock came again, slower this time. My phone was on the counter, just out of reach. Then Peter's voice, Lois, it's me. Relief washed through me, so quickly my knees went weak. I yanked the door open. He stepped in, eyes scanning the yard before shutting it behind him. You okay? He asked. I thought, my voice cracked. I thought it was him. Yeah. He rubbed his jaw, looking unsettled. So did I, for a second. That's when I noticed the envelope in his hand. Someone left this on my truck, he said, holding it out. No stamp. No address. Just my name. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Cold. You went to the police. Cute. But you forgot. They can't protect you. No one can. Not from me. Beneath the words was a picture. Me. Taken through the workshop window. My breath caught. My stomach heaved. Peter snatched the paper, his face hardening as he studied it. This was taken yesterday, he said grimly. That's the dress you were working on. I sank into a chair, clutching my arms. He's watching me. Right there in town. And I didn't even know. Peter crouched in front of me, voice low but fierce. Listen to me. He wants you rattled. That's why he's doing this. But I'm not letting him near you. Not ever. I wanted to believe him. But the photo burned in my mind. The angle, the distance. Victor hadn't just been watching. He'd been close enough to touch the glass. The next morning, I walked into the workshop on trembling legs. Anna was already inside, unpacking bolts of fabric. She looked up, saw my face, and frowned. What happened? I almost lied again. Almost said nothing. But I couldn't carry it anymore. The fear was splitting me open. So I told her. About Victor. About the texts. About the photo. Her eyes widened, horror flickering across her features. Then, without a word, she grabbed my hand and squeezed. You're not facing this alone, she said fiercely. Do you hear me? If he wants to come for you, he's got to get through me too. The words cracked something inside me, something hard I hadn't realized was there. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest flicker of strength. But that night, as I tucked Timothy into bed, he asked, Mom, why are you scared all the time now? Tears stung my eyes. I'm not scared, honey, I whispered, smoothing his hair. I'm just careful. But when I stepped into the hallway, I found Peter waiting, holding my phone. His face was pale. Another text had just come through. Careful won't save you. I used to think fear was like a storm, loud, chaotic, impossible to ignore. But Victor's kind of fear was different. It was a net. Quiet. Invisible. Pulling tighter day by day until you realized you couldn't move. After the envelope and the text, I barely slept. Every creak in the floorboards, every hum from the refrigerator felt like a warning. Timothy noticed. I tried to hide it, but children always see more than we give them credit for. Mom, he said one morning as I buttered his toast with trembling hands, why do you keep checking the window? I forced a smile, just keeping an eye on the weather. But Timothy glanced outside at the clear blue sky and frowned. He knew I was lying. That afternoon, Anna walked into the workshop carrying a thermos of coffee. She took one look at me inside. You didn't sleep. I shook my head. Well, then you're coming with me tonight, she declared. There's a town meeting at the library. Safe, crowded, lots of people. You need a change of air. At first, I refused. Crowds made me nervous now. Too many faces, too many chances for one of them to belong to him. But Anna wouldn't take no for an answer. So that evening, I left Timothy with Peter, who was still insisting on staying close whenever he could, and followed Anna to the library. The meeting was ordinary enough. People arguing about zoning laws and noise ordinances. Mundane, harmless things. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Until I saw him. Not Victor. Someone else. A man near the back, sitting alone. His hair was slicked back, his eyes sharp, and he never once looked at the speaker. He only looked at me. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that I was so wound up, I saw danger everywhere. But when I whispered it to Anna, she stole a glance, then stiffened. Lois, he hasn't taken his eyes off you. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. My palms were slick, my heart pounding. As soon as it ended, Anna and I rushed out. I nearly tripped down the library steps, desperate to escape that man's stare. Outside, Peter's truck was waiting. He'd come to pick us up with Timothy in the back seat. Relief washed over me as I slid inside. But when I turned to look out the window, the man from the library was standing on the sidewalk, watching. And then he smiled. By the time Peter pulled out onto the main road, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold Timothy's. Peter glanced at me in the rearview mirror. What happened? I told him. About the man. The stare. The smile. Peter's jaw tightened. That wasn't random. Hale sent him. The next morning we found proof. The workshop's back door, always locked, was wide open when Anna and I arrived. Inside, nothing was taken. Nothing obvious anyway. But on the sewing table sat a spool of thread. Black. The kind I never stocked, because my clients rarely wanted it. Anna picked it up with trembling fingers. He was here. I sank into a chair, my knees too weak to hold me. He wants us to know it. Peter came as soon as I called him. He walked the perimeter, checked the locks, his face a storm of anger and worry. This isn't just intimidation anymore, he said grimly. He's testing the limits, seeing how far he can go before anyone stops him. Anna whispered, and if no one does? Peter didn't answer. That night, when I closed the curtains and checked the locks for the 10th time, I realized something terrifying. Victor wasn't just watching. He wasn't just threatening. He was weaving us into his game. And every move we made, going to the police, going to the library, even opening the workshop, was exactly where he wanted us. The trap wasn't closing. It was already closed. When I walked into the workshop the morning after the break-in, I expected to feel defeated, afraid, shaken. But something strange happened instead. I felt angry. That spool of black thread sat on the sewing table like an insult. Like Victor had waltzed into the space I had built, my safe place, my future, and marked it as his own. I stared at it until my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug crescents into my palms. For weeks I'd been living in his shadow, waiting for the next knock, the next text, the next reminder that he could reach me anywhere. But this place wasn't his. It was mine. And I was done giving it to him. Anna came in a few minutes later, her eyes darting toward the table. Still there, she muttered. I didn't throw it out, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I wanted to see it. To remember why we're drawing the line. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Then let's decide how. Peter arrived not long after, Timothy in tow. My son ran straight to the corner with his sketchbook, blissfully unaware of the storm building around him. I envied him that peace. Peter's face was grim. I checked the locks again. Whoever came in last night knew exactly what they were doing. No forced entry. No broken glass. Either he picked them clean, or someone gave him a key, Anna finished. The thought made my stomach twist. Who in this town would do that? Who could I trust? I shoved the fear down. Doesn't matter how he got in. What matters is this. I pointed at the spool. He wanted us to know he'd been here. And I won't let him keep taking pieces of my life like this. Not anymore. Peter's eyes softened, pride flickering in them. So what do you want to do? I looked between them. My voice shook, but the words came steady. We draw lines. No more waiting. No more hiding. We decide what we'll tolerate and what we won't. And we fight back when he crosses it. Anna crossed her arms, fire in her eyes. Then the first line is the workshop. This is our space. He steps in here again. We make noise so loud the whole town hears it. Peter added, and Timothy. He's off limits. Always. Anyone even looks at him the wrong way, He cut himself off, jaw tight. I swallowed. Then we need eyes. More than just ours. Neighbors, friends. People will notice if someone's lurking where they shouldn't. Anna raised an eyebrow. A watch. Exactly, I said. If Hale thinks he can sneak in and out unseen, we make sure he can't. It wasn't much of a plan, not yet. But as we stood there, the three of us, I felt something shift. For the first time, we weren't just reacting to him. We were deciding for ourselves. That night, we put the first part into motion. Anna called in favors from her cousins who lived nearby. Peter spoke to a few trusted neighbors on his street. I swallowed my pride and asked one of the older women from church to keep an eye out. By sunset, we had a loose circle of people who cared enough to watch, to text, to warn us if something seemed wrong. It wasn't official. It wasn't police. But it was something. When I locked up the workshop that evening, Anna pressed the black spool into my hand. Keep it, she said. As a reminder, I shoved it deep into my coat pocket. Later, after Timothy was asleep, Peter lingered at my door. You were fierce today, he said softly. I'm tired of being afraid, I admitted. He hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair from my face. You don't have to do this alone, Lois. Not anymore. For a second, the air between us changed. Warmer. Closer. But then his phone buzzed. He frowned, reading the screen. His voice was tight when he showed me the message. It was from an unknown number. Lines in the sand wash away with the tide.